Hello everyone, hope you are doing great. I am Bashar. Welcome to my channel Tech Quest Learning Point. In my last episode, I discussed on the Azure storage for non-relational data. Today I am going to discuss on fundamentals of Azure Cosmos DB. This tutorial is derived from Microsoft Learning Path that help you to make preparation for the exam DP 900 Microsoft Azure Data Fundamentals certification. So I can sure that this tutorial will be helpful for the clear exam TP900. Before starting the tutorial, let's see the content of this tutorial at a glance. Azure Cosmos DB provides a highly scalable store for non-relational data. This tutorial covers the various topics related to the fundamentals of Azure Cosmos DB, including key features and capabilities of Azure Cosmos DB, API is supported in Azure Cosmos DB, and Azure Cosmos DB instance. Database and model. Relational databases store data in relational tables, but sometimes the structure imposed by this model can be too rigid and often leads to poor performance unless you spend time implementing detailed tuning. Other models, collaboratively known as Nosql database, exist. This model store data in other structures such as documents, graphs, key value stores, and column family stores. In simply, we can store any structured relational data into any relational databases, but for other structures such as documents, graphs, it is not possible to store by using this model. NoSQL databases are required to store this data. Cosmos DB and NoSQL. Azure Cosmos DB is a fully managed NoSQL and relational database for modern app development. Azure Cosmos DB offers single-digit millisecond response times, automatic and instant scalability, along with guarantee speed at any scale. Azure Cosmos DB is a technology created by Microsoft, globally distributed multi-model database service for managing data at planet scale. Cosmos DB is like any other database, however, it utilizes JSON. It is schema agnostic, horizontally scalable, and generally classified as a NoSQL database. Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB is a globally distributed JSON-based database delivered as a platform as a service PaaS in Microsoft Azure. It allows users to build and distribute their applications across an Azure data center automatically without any need for prior configuration. Azure Cosmos DB supports multiple application programming interface APIs that enable developers to use programming semantics of many common kinds of data stored to work with data in a Cosmos DB database. The internal data structure is abstracted, enabling developers to use Cosmos DB to store and query data using APIs with which they are already familiar. Cosmos DB uses indexes and partitioning to provide fast read and write performance and can scale to massive volumes of data. You can enable multi-region writes, adding the Azure regions of your choice to your Cosmos DB account so that globally distributed users can each work with data in their local replica. Cosmos DB has been used by many of Microsoft's products for mission-critical applications at a global scale, including Skype, Xbox, Microsoft 365, Azure, and many others. Cosmos DB is highly suitable for the following scenarios: IoT and telematics. These systems typically ingest large amounts of data in frequent bursts of activity. Cosmos DB can accept and store this information quickly. The data can then be used by analytics services such as Azure Machine Learning, Azure HD Insight, and Power BI. Additionally, you can process the data in real time using Azure functions and that are triggered as data arrives in the database. Retail and marketing. Microsoft uses Cosmos DB for its own e-commerce platforms that run as part of Windows Store and Xbox Live. It's also used in the retail industry for storing catalog data and for event sourcing in order processing pipelines. Gaming. The database tier is a crucial component of gaming applications. Modern games perform graphical processing on mobile console clients but rely on the cloud to deliver customized and personalized content like in-game stats, social media integration, and high-score leaderboards. Games often require single millisecond latencies for reads and write to provide an engaging in-game experience. A game database needs to be fast and be able to handle massive spikes in request rates during new game launches and features updates. Web and mobile applications. Azure Cosmos DB is commonly used within web and mobile applications and is well suited for modeling social interactions, integrating with third-party services, and for building rich personalized experiences. The Cosmos DB SDKs can be used to build rich iOS and Android applications using the popular Xamarin framework. Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL is Microsoft's native non-relational service for working with the document data model. It manages data in JSON document format and despite being a NoSQL data storage solution, uses SQL syntax to work with the data. A SQL query for an Azure Cosmos DB database containing customer data might look similar to this. The result of this query consists of one or more JSON documents as shown here. MongoDB is a popular open source database in which data is stored in binary JSON (BSON) format. Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB enables developers to use MongoDB client libraries and code to work with data in Azure Cosmos DB. MongoDB Query Language (MQL) uses a compact object-oriented syntax in which developers use objects to call methods. For example, the following query uses the find method to query the products collection in the DB object. The results of this query consist of JSON documents similar to these. Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL is a native PostgreSQL globally distributed relational database that automatically shares data to help you build highly scalable apps. You can start building apps on a single node server group, the same way you would put with Postgre anywhere else. As your app's scalability and performance requirements grow, you can seamlessly scale to multiple nodes by transparently distributing your tables. PostgreSQL is a relational database management system (RDBMS) in which you define relational database of data. For example, you might define a table of products like this. You could then query this table to retrieve the name and price of a specific product using SQL like this. The result of this query would contain a row for product 1 to 3 like this. Azure Cosmos DB for table is used to work with data in key value tables similar to Azure Table Storage. It offers greater scalability and performance than Azure Table Storage. For example, you might define a table named customers like this. You can then use Table API through one of the language specific SDKs to make calls to your service endpoint to retrieve data from the table. For example, the following request returns the row containing record for Samir Nadoi in the table above. Azure Cosmos DB for Apache Cassandra is compatible with Apache Cassandra, which is a popular open source database that uses a column family storage structure. Column families are tables similar to those in a relational database, with the exception that it's not mandatory for every row to have the same columns. For example, you might create an employees table like this. Cassandra supports a syntax based on SQL, so a client application could retrieve the record for Ben Chan like this. Azure Cosmos DB for Apache Gremlin is used with data in a graph structure in which entities are defined as varieties that form nodes in connected graph. Nodes are connected by edges that represent relationships like this. The example in the image shows two kinds of vertex, employee and department, and edges that connect them. Employee Ben reports to employee Sue, and both employees work in the hardware department. Gremlin syntax includes functions to operate on vertex and edges, enabling you to insert, update, delete, and query data in the graph. For example, you could use the following code to add a new employee named Alice that reports to the employee with ID 1 Sue. The following query returns all of the employee vertex in order of ID. Review. Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB is a globally distributed JSON-based database delivered as a platform as a service PaaS in Microsoft Azure. Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL is Microsoft's native non-relational service for working with the document data model. It manages data in JSON document format, and despite being a NoSQL data storage solution, use SQL syntax to work with the data. Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB. MongoDB is a popular open source database in which data is stored in binary JSON format. Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB enables developers to use MongoDB client libraries and code to work with the data in Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL. Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL is a native PostgreSQL globally distributed relational database that automatically shares data to help you build highly scalable apps. Azure Cosmos DB for Table. Azure Cosmos DB for Table is used to work with data in key value tables. Similar to Azure Table Storage, it offers greater scalability and performance than Azure Table Storage. Azure Cosmos DB for Apache Cassandra. Azure Cosmos DB for Apache Cassandra is compatible with Apache Cassandra, which is a popular open source database that uses a column family storage structure. Azure Cosmos DB for Apache Gremlin. Azure Cosmos DB for Apache Gremlin is used with data in a graph structure in which entities are defined as vertices that form nodes in connected graph. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you all have been able to take the idea about the fundamental of Azure Cosmos DB. If you think this tutorial is helpful for learning the Azure Cloud Computing, please click on like button and request you all to share it more and more to the persons who are searching the tutorial like this. If you have any questions on this tutorial, opinions and queries about this channel, please type this in the comment box. You also mail to me. In the description box, email ID is given for you. Kindly subscribe this channel and click on the bell button so that you can get notification when new tutorial is published.